goddess has spoken to me. She who prepares the hearth, who secures our holes. You know who I am.
Greetings and welcome, friends of the realm, to the first and potentially only Warhammer lore video on this channel. As many of you know, I've been deep on the Warhammer grind for these past few months, delving further and further into the lore and the intricacies both on-screen and off, even going so far as to start collecting and painting up my own army of 4th edition and 5th edition High and Dark Elves, as I start a mini collection that I began long ago when I was 9, but fell out of with when I was 9 because, well, I was 9. With Grombrindal's upcoming Total War series on our channel, I thought now would be the perfect time to briefly go over some of the White Dwarfs lore so you can be just as excited as I am to play as this absolutely legendary figure. A figure, might I add, so integral to the lore of Warhammer itself that Games Workshop's nearly 50-year running monthly magazine, starting way back in 1977, White Dwarf, is actually named for, or at the very least shares its name with, Grombrindal. Oh, and he's also voiced in-game by the John Rhys-Davies, better known by many as Gimli from the Lord of the Rings film trilogy. How cool is that? Now, before we begin delving into the depths of this lore, remember that if you enjoy this sort of content, a like and a comment go a long way with YouTube's dreaded algorithm and lets me know that you would like to see more of this sort of thing on the channel. I hate doing these little spiels, but people say they help, so there it is. With that out of the way, let's take it way, way back to a period in Warhammer lore when Dwarf and Elf not only got along, but considered each other friends and fought side by side against the forces of chaos. A time when the High King was not the hand-carried throne of power riding Giga-Chad Thorgrim Grudgebearer, but was instead the son of not only the dwarf ancestor god of mining, Grungni, but also the goddess of home and hearth, Valea. I speak of none other than the first High King of the Dwarves, Snorri Whitebeard. Oh, and for those who don't know about Warhammer Dwarves, well, they don't like to be slighted. Oaths are something sacred to the Dwarfs, and those who break them get their name added to the Great Book of Grudges. Grudges, you ask? Oh yeah. Grudges. And they hold those suckers for basically forever against anyone and anything they feel has slighted them. That'll be important going forward, but we'll get to that. Now, the information found in this episode was taken from all sorts of sources, from White Dwarf magazine itself to online wikis. I'm by no means an expert on Warhammer lore, so as always, if I miss anything, please do not hesitate to let me know in the comments. The background of this video, as you have no doubt noticed, is mostly comprised of pictures and battles from the Total War Warhammer 3 game. I hope you enjoy. Anyway, let's begin. In the year 4421 BC, or before the crowning of Sigmar in the imperial calendar, Grungni, ancestor god of smiths, forged the throne of power, the seat of all dwarf high kings, and gifted it to his son Snorri, who was soon after, in dwarf span anyway, declared High King of the Dwarves following the departure of the ancestor gods from the old world. An important thing to remember about these ancestor gods is that originally they were just magically gifted and powerful dwarves. In the world of Warhammer, it is not only possible, but a frequent occurrence that incredibly powerful individuals become something more, even gods on rare occasions. For example, in Total War Warhammer 3, Teclis and Tyrion, elven brothers and incredibly powerful in their own right, are both high elf characters who, in the Age of Sigmar, are now gods after the events of the End Times, or the conquest of the Old World by the forces of chaos. Now, King Snorri accomplished many a great deed in his lifetime, but perhaps the most impressive among these was the alliance he forged with the High Elves thanks to the influential prince and at the time elven ambassador Malekith, son of the first Phoenix King, Anarion. It was during this alliance that the Dwarfs and Elves fought side by side, banishing chaos back to the northern wastes as Malekith and Snorri became like brothers, saving each other countless times in the field of battle, such as in their fight against the demon princes Alcor the Defiler and Hatarkek, the ever-changing. When the war against chaos ended, trade flourished, and for a time there was a mutual love and respect between these two ancient peoples, each assisting the other in the construction and expansion of their realms. So deep was the bond between these two that in the year 2839 BC, the second High Elf Phoenix King, Bel-Shanar, came to the dwarf capital of Karaz-Akarak and presented Snorri with a barrel of Illyrian wine so rare it is said that a single glass would bankrupt the average elf lord. Following a rather humorous exchange, where the High King of the Dwarfs thrust his axe deep into the barrel and consumed the entirety of its contents in a single go, to the shock of his elven guests no doubt, the two races swore an oath of everlasting friendship, with Prince Malekith remaining at the dwarf capital as ambassador. During this time, the king and prince became as close a friend as any two peoples could, each sharing adventures and exchanging gifts of their people with one another, one of which was an Athilmar goblet which Snorri cherished and used all the rest of his days. Alas, this friendship could not stop the hands of chaos or time. Snorri, after a long and prosperous reign, succumbed to his mortality, with only his true friend and brother-in-arms Prince Malekith by his side. I'm sure his son was there somewhere, but it says it was just Malekith. Malekith there swore an oath to Snorri that he would forever ensure the friendship and bonds of their peoples. It was at Snorri's instruction that powerful runes of vengeance be placed on his casket, and, should these bonds be broken, or his people need him, he vowed to return to smite their enemies and ensure the survival of his race. For those curious, these are the endlessly badass words Snorri spoke on his deathbed. I'm sure I won't do them justice, but I hope they send a little shiver down your spine like they do mine. Vengeance shall be mine. When our foes are great, I shall return to my people. When the foul creatures of this world bay at the doors of Karazakarak, I shall take up my axe once more, and my ire shall rock the mountains. With Snorri's passing, Malekith departed and journeyed the wide world all the way to the Chaos Wastes, where he slowly began his fall to chaos after his discovery of a mysterious circlet of dark magic. A dark magic that would slowly become his obsession. On Ulthuan, his people suffered a similar fate. With the forces of chaos temporarily defeated, many now forgot about the perils of the past, and grew selfish, arrogant, and indulgent, pursuing material and fleshly desires which gave rise to cults dedicated to the worship of forbidden gods. With blood flowing in the dark places of the Elven Kingdom, chaos festered in the wounds of their pleasure. Civil unrest grew in the Elven lands as whispers claimed Belshazzar a usurper and false king. And though Malekith, their perceived rightful ruler, returned to banish the cults, he too fell victim to these whispers. And though it was indeed his birthright, one he gave up willingly, he ultimately betrayed and murdered the Phoenix King. Ulthuan thereafter erupted in a civil war known as the Sundering, which would forever shatter not only Malekith's race, but his promise to Snorri. Though Malekith and the Dark Elves, as they became known, were defeated, they traveled the world on their ships and at the instruction of Malekith attacked the Dwarfs to break the bonds between they and the High Elves. The Dwarfs, unaware of the civil war between the Dark and the High Elves, demanded to know why their old allies would break their trust in this way. With their initial messages going unheard, High King Godric Starbreaker sent his ambassador Forik Grimbach to Ulthuan with a party to parley directly with Phoenix King Kalidor II. But Kalidor II was a ruthless and grim man, and in his fury, he ordered Grimbach and his party's beards shaven before expelling them from Ulthuan. Outraged by this most grievous disgrace, the dwarfs mustered their forces, and the 400-year-long War of the Beard, or War of the Ancients, which devastated both races and forever destroyed their relations, began. It was during this time that the legendary figure known as the White Dwarf first appeared at the Battle of Tor Alessi, a prolonged siege of terrible losses on both sides, which eventually, with the help of the mysterious dwarf, saw the death of Phoenix King Kalidor II by the axe of High King Godric Starbreaker. Since then, Grombrindal has appeared throughout dwarf history on the eve of major battles, wandering the camp alone, only to appear again in the heat of battle, in all his bejeweled splendor, the might of his axe reaping a bloody harvest in the name of his people. But just as quickly as he appears, the White Dwarf vanishes once the battle is won, only to return when his people need him most, once again. It is said that Grombrindal, though easily recognized for his flowing, magnificent white beard, can be spotted in the fray thanks in part to his unparalleled war gear. Runesmiths who have glimpsed the legendary figure claim that the helm upon his head is none other than the rune helm of Zufbar, a work of unrivaled craftsmanship and power. Likewise, his rune cloak is said to be woven by the ancestor goddess Valea herself, with some legends claiming the goddess gave it to the dwarf as a declaration of love, or perhaps admiration. His Glimril scale armor won in the Battle of Thrafe, where the White Dwarf slew an army of 10,000 warriors of chaos for his people, was ripped from the jaws of a dead Chaos Lord, and is said to be as old as the world itself. But perhaps none of his treasures and arms are more impressive than the rune axe of Grimnir, said to have been forged and used by the ancestor god himself. Now why, you might ask, would the two gods who were the supposed parents of Snorri relinquish such treasures to this unknown figure? Were he not the same as their long-dead son? Why couldn't that legendary first High King with his power and parentage have been given a touch of immortality for his lifetime of wondrous deeds, and elevated to godhood to assist his people when they need him most? Though this was once a mystery that could be debated over, it has long been confirmed by the end times that Grombrindal is indeed the revenant spirit of Snorri Whitebeard himself. While his end time story is a bit of a mess, to be honest, Grombrindal does face off against Malekith once again, with the desire to free his cursed soul, but chooses instead to spare his old friend, after defeating him easily in a duel, which eventually leads to a temporary sort of redemption for Malekith, as he assumes the mantle of godhood, like Tyrion and Teclis, becoming Malarian. Although it should be said that Malarian is still very much evil, considering he's known as the Shadow King, so overall kind of a weird move by a vengeance demigod from a race of century-long grudge-bearing warriors. Then again, the end times are its own can of worms, so let's just leave it at that. But here, our tale of the White Dwarf ends, for although he has appeared on many battlefields since, there isn't much more you need to know about him other than he's essentially an immortal spirit of vengeance in battle, who comes and goes as he will when all hope seems lost, to turn the tide and bring victory to his people. To put simply, Grombrindal is one of the, if not the dwarfiest grudge-striking, name-taking dwarf to ever dwarf, besides maybe Gotrek from the Godric and Felix book himself. But the White Dwarf is synonymous with being a dwarf, and any who are lucky enough to see his visage in battle should consider themselves not only saved, but lucky, for they are in the presence of something, and someone, truly great. And that, my friends, is it for this one. I thank you guys so much for watching. I hope you appreciated, or at least like this little lore video. I wanted to make a quick little something that people could consume easily. I know that there's other of these on the platform, but I've watched through a couple of them and I wasn't really that satisfied with them because I kind of just wanted to make something that you could watch really fast, basically get some framework for who Grombrindal is and some of his lore and why he hates the Dark Elves specifically so much, or at least the elves in general, and enjoy your playthrough. That's kind of what I make lore videos for anyway. I don't really try to be like, you know, a lore master. I just try to give you what you kind of more or less need to know and then send you on your way. And I hope I've done that here. But as always, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm Soul. This has been another lore video, this time featuring the legendary White Dwarf, and I hope to see you in the next one.